When you work with spreadsheets, sometimes you'll find yourself needing to put in an entry, but part of that entry can be found someplace else, another sheet, for example, or another place in the worksheet that you're working in. But you're always going back and forth between where you're doing your entry and where you're looking up some answers. And it just seems that we have a computer. Surely there's a function that could help us with that. Well, yes, there is. It's called Vlookup. And so Vlookup looks at the information that you type in one spreadsheet and then brings back the answer that you're looking for. Boy, does that save you so much time and energy, and it makes your work so much more accurate. Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and let's look at Vlookup. As I look at our first example for Vlookup, I can see that this is a monthly mileage report that I'm required to fill out. When I fill out this kind of report, I'm generally asked for the date that I traveled and where I traveled to, and then what the mileage was, and then we even have a column here in column D that multiplies that mileage times the amount. And in this case, because of the kind of job I have, the mileage is always a round trip. So I simply leave work, go to the location, and then come back to work. As I look over at the right, I can see that I have a list of the cities that I have recently visited, and they're in the order that I visited them, so that is something to keep in mind. But anyhow, I have my table here of the city where I visited and then that round trip mileage that it took. And that's so much easier, even just looking at it on the same sheet, than looking at the location and then getting out a map program and trying to figure out the mileage each time. So this already is a shortcut just by having this list, but Sheets is going to make it even easier for us. Let's put in, say, Joplin. And then when I tab over to C4, where I want to put in the mileage, instead of trying to find Joplin in this list, I'm going to have Sheets do the work. So what I'm going to do is go up to the toolbar and to the far right where I have that kind of looks like the Greek sigma or a fancy E, which is the Functions button, and click on it. Now I happen to know that Vlookup is in the lookup group. So I can scroll down here and find the lookup group and hover my mouse on it, and when I do, there are a lot of lookup possibilities. What we are going to do though is look for Vlookup and click on it. Now we get the syntax, the pattern of how this looks when we do that. And so already in my cell it even says equals Vlookup, and it has the parentheses for the function's argument. But the first thing that we want to find is the search key. Now the search key is what I type in my spreadsheet on the left that matches something in the table over at the right. So my search key is, and I'm just going to click on it, B4. And then I need to put in the comma that separates the search key from the next part of this function. And the next part of this function is range. Well, it's not the range of the spreadsheet where my insertion point is blinking. It's actually the range of where I'm going to look up the information. So I can select H3 through I9. And then we need to put in another comma. And then it looks like we need to put in something else, which is the index. Now the index is simply which column in this range that we've just defined is the one where we get the answer that we want. So we know here city is column 1, and it's how it matches to my spreadsheet, but mileage, column 2, is the one that I want to report back to my spreadsheet. So I'm going to type A2. Now there is one other thing here, and that is sorted. And right now we'll just kind of leave that blank and see what happens. And then I can press enter to set that into my spreadsheet. So when I look at Joplin, and then I go to the right and I look at C4, when I come over here and find Joplin, oh my goodness, it says 336. Well, let's try another entry. So let me come down to location in B5, and I'll type St. Louis. I want to figure out that mileage, so the easiest way to do that is simply find my fill handle that was in C4 and copy it. Let's just copy it all the way down to C14. And it says that a round trip for St. Louis is 306. Wait a minute, because when I come to the table over here on the right, it says that St. Louis is 484. Well, what could have caused that problem? Because what that 306 really is, as I look, the last cell in this table. Well, one of the hard and fast rules when you're using Vlookup is that this table that you are using to look up information in must be sorted in ascending order. So I'm going to select St. Louis through Jeff City and even the mileage. And then I'm going to go to Data in the menu bar. And then I'm going to come down to the second choice, which is Sort Range. And we want to sort the range by column H, A to Z. We'll click on that. As soon as I sorted the cities here that I have visited, look at what happened to my formula. St. Louis now says 484. Joplin still says 336. Well, let's say that I come down here at the end of the month and I go to Columbia. And it says, wait a minute, you have an error. It says it doesn't find the value Columbia in the Vlookup evaluation. Well, how could that be? Let's look at that formula that we have in the formula bar. So it says Vlookup, okay, B12, well, that's right, Columbia, H11 through I17. So what we have neglected to do is define this table as absolute. So as the formula adjusts, as I copy it down, it continually adjusts the references in this table as well. We don't want that. So let's go back up to C4 and make a correction. With my laptop and trying to record a video, I can't press F4. But generally, you should be able to come in here and just before the H, press F4 and it will put dollar signs for you. But in my case, I need to type a dollar sign in front of the H and in front of the 3 and in front of the I and in front of the 9. And then I can copy that down. So let me go back up to that little blue circle. Find my skinny plus sign and click drag down. Joplin is still at 336. St. Louis is still at 484. But now when I look at my Columbia example, it is 238 and it has found the table so I can get a correct answer. Now this saves you a whole lot of time, doesn't it? So I could even type Jefferson City here and press my tab key, and it immediately fills in that Jefferson City is 306 miles. And of course, because I have the amount formula here in column D, it also gives the amount. But let's look at another example of how we might deal with this table and making sure that what we have in that range is absolute references. I've moved over to a second example, which looks very much like the example that we just worked with. And again, it has the date, the location, mileage. The amount already has the calculation for multiplying the mileage times the current mileage reimbursement rate. And then over at the right, we have that range of cities and the round trip mileage that we want to report. Instead of just having cells over at the right that are in a list, what I have done is I've gone to data in the menu bar and I have created a named range. Now I'm just going to click on named ranges down here in the middle of this drop-down menu. And on the right, it even shows that I've created this named range, mileage for city, and it gives me the cells that are involved, which is H4 through I9. And if I click on it, it shows me that this is, in fact, the list that I'm going to use in my formula. Anytime you have a named range, you are already using absolute references. You don't need to add dollar signs in. So let's see how that would work. First of all, let's go ahead and go to C4 where we want to put in our formula for Vlookup. And to do that, let me go ahead and close out of the named ranges pane here and go to the far right of our toolbar where we have the functions button. And we'll go back down to lookup and hover over that, go to the left and find Vlookup and click on that. When we do Vlookup, again, the search key is what is in my spreadsheet on the left that's going to match a column in the table in the range on the right, and that is location, which is B4. And I'll type in my comma, and then it says, what is the range? Now, it'd be really great if I could select the cells in this list and have it pick up the named range and put that name in my formula for me, but I need to actually type mileage for city. And then notice that on the right, it does select those specific cells in H and I. Then I'll put in my comma. Now, what is the index? Well, I want to find the city and then report back to that function the mileage. So column 1, mileage is column 2. So I'll type a 2. And then I'll type a comma. And the is sorted. This always feels a little backwards to me, but if I want an exact match, I type false or leave it blank like we did before. If I want an approximate match, I type true. So we're going to type false. And then we can press enter to set that in. And it says NA right now because I don't have a location in B4, but we can copy that down using our fill handle. And then in B4, let's just type St. Louis. And it says 484, let's see, St. Louis, 484, and it's done my calculation for me. Now remember that we ran into issues when we came down to row 11 and typed something in. So let me type Joplin. Nope, we have absolutely no issue. Joplin, 336. Here's Joplin, 336. So it has found that range in H and I and automatically reported with no issue. Now that is really a great way to deal with absolute references and how you might use them in the Vlookup function. Our next example is something that we probably really couldn't do because we're asking for people's ages, but we've decided that we are selling tickets to an event and we want people to show ID so that we can see exactly how old they are. And then, based on their age, they get discounts of that ticket price. So while it's probably very fictitious, it is certainly a good example for us to see how we can use a match that isn't exact. So let's look at some of the information here in our table on the left. First of all, we need to find out what that birth year is, and then in column B, we're going to take our current year and subtract the birth year from it so we can find out how old they are. And then in C4 is where our formula will start for us to figure out what the ticket type is based on their age. And to do that, we're going to use Vlookup, but we're going to come over here to our range where it gives the age of the different people that might come in, and then how we're designating those ticket prices. And so we have children who come in, infants and toddlers that are under 5 will be a child ticket. Kids who are 5 to 12 will be designated as kids. You have students that are basically in their teens. Adults start at 21, and then seniors start at 60. On the right of that, we have 3 columns this time. So now, children who are those infants and toddlers get in totally free, whereas young kids get a 20% discount. If you're in school, you get a 10% discount, but if you're an adult, sorry, you get to pay full price, except if you're a senior, then you get a 15% discount. Now you'll also notice that as we look at this age column, I didn't type in every age from 0 to over 60. And so we're going to have to use something besides exact matches to make this table work for us. So first of all, let's look at the birth year, and I'm just going to type in some years so we have some good examples. So let's see, 2020, press enter, 2000, press enter. We'll type in 1950, press enter, 2018, 2007, and 2016. And so yes, we have a 3-year-old, a 23-year-old, definitely a senior at 73, a kid, a teen at 16, and another kid, but slightly older. And so this 7-year-old fits within the kids group. The 5-year-old fits within the kids group as well. But I think we have every age group represented. So now let's look at C4, where I want to find the ticket type. In other words, child, kids, adults, seniors. Well, we need to go to our Vlookup and go to functions first. So we'll go to that functions button on the far right, find the lookup group, and find Vlookup on the left. And what is our search key? In other words, what on this left-hand side in my main spreadsheet matches the first column in the range in this table? And well, it's age. So that would be B4. I'll type my comma. What is next? Well, the range. Well, the range is H3 through J8. We've already learned that we need to put dollar signs in front of the H, in front of the 3, in front of the J, and in front of the 8. And remember that if you're not trying to record, F4 may work for you and be a great shortcut when it comes to putting in those dollar signs. Then from here, I need to type a comma after the 8. And what is the index? Well, we want to find what will be reported back to ticket type. So let's see, age is 1, ticket type is 2, price discount is 3. So in this case, we're going to do column 2. Now this is where it gets really interesting after I type my comma, where it says is sorted. Yes, it's optional mostly, but in this case, we need to have an inexact match, so we're going to say true. And then press enter. And what's nice about Sheets is as soon as I put in my first formula, it says, well, do you want to autofill? And I could use either Control Enter, or I can come down to the check mark and click on the check mark, and it copies that formula down for me. So let's see if this is right. 3-year-old is a child. That's correct. 23 years old. Oh yeah, see, it's above 21, but below 60, adult. As I look on the left again then, 73 is definitely a senior. 5 is a kid, and it's an exact match. We're looking for an approximate match, but sometimes we get an exact match as well. 16 is a student, and that is between 13 and 21, so that's right. And then we have kids at 7, which is between the 5 and the 13, so that is correct. Now we also then want to find out what their ticket discount is going to be, because in column E, where it says the ticket price is $15, it's actually $15 minus whatever this discount is going to be. So again, we need to use Vlookup to find the discount. Let's go to our functions button, go down to lookup, and then over to the left to Vlookup. What is our search key? Well, the search key is still the age of that person, and we'll type a comma. What is the range? Well, it hasn't changed either. It is still H3 through J8. And again, though, we know from experience, we need to have dollar signs in front of the H, in front of the 3, in front of the J, and in front of the 8. Then I need to put in a comma after the 8 so that we can figure out the index. Now this time, age is 1, ticket is 2, but the discount, which is what we're trying to figure out, is in column 3. So we'll type a 3, put in our comma, and again, we need to have an approximate match, not an exact match. So we'll type true and press enter. And then again, it's going to give us this autofill, so we're going to click on the check mark. And so now the child has 100% discount, the adult has 0% discount, the senior has 15%, the kids have 20%, the student has a 10% discount, and the kids again have a 20% discount. And while this is a very small listing, and we could kind of look over at the right and figure this out fairly easily, let's say that you had 50 or 100 people who want to buy tickets, or let's face it, it could be 1,000 people who want to buy tickets. Then Vlookup becomes just a fantastic tool for helping you determine the ticket prices very easily. For our next example, let's say that we want to keep a list of the people in our department, and there aren't that many. There's not even quite 10 of them, but I need to get that information from the company address book. Now, the company address book is on a different sheet. And when I click on it, it has a lot more information as well. So it has the employee ID, the person's name kind of put together. So I have last name, comma, first name. or I have last name and first name separated out depending on what we need to do. I have their title, their phone, and their email address. And so what I want to do is find information here that I can put into my department contacts. So let's go back to department contacts. And the first thing we want to find is that combined name. So in B4, we're going to go to the Functions button, click on it, come down to Lookup, and then over at the left, find Vlookup. And for lookup, what is the search key? Well, the search key, and remember it is in this spreadsheet where I find that, what corresponds with another field in that company address book? Well, it's the employee ID in A4. So we'll click on that, type our comma. What is the range? Now the range is the big company address book. So we need to go back over to the tab for company address book. And then we're going to click and drag over A3 through G23. And then we can come back to department contacts. But before we do, remember we also then want to find the column number of where we're going to find that particular information. Well, in this case, it's 1, 2. So I can type the comma and then even type the 2 and press enter, and it brings me back to my department contacts and Ada King. And then I can simply copy that formula down my column, and I can click on the check mark to copy all those in. So that was so easy simply by adding in the company address book. They've also added in the false, meaning that we need an exact match rather than an approximate match. Well, let's also then do the phone number over here in C4, where we'll go through basically the same steps. We just have to figure out what column the phone number is in. So we'll go to our Functions button, go down to Lookup, and over to Vlookup. And what is the search key? Well, it's the same thing. It's the employee ID in A4. Type our comma. What is the range? Well, we'll go over to Company Address Book and click on that tab. And then what is the range? Well, I could just click and drag, or I could type it in if I know that, but it's really A3 through G23. And then I'll type my comma, but before I do that, let's also look at what we want to report back to the spreadsheet, which is the phone number. So let's see, we have column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Phone number is 6, so we'll type comma 6 and press enter, and we're going to assume that if we leave this blank, this gives us an exact match, which is what we really want. We'll press enter, and it takes us back to Ada King and her correct phone number. And then all we need to do is click and drag down to copy that phone number someplace else. That was so easy, and now I'm able to use my department contact information based on what I see in the company address book. To learn even more, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning for such great resources as Universal Class, Learning Express Library, LinkedIn Learning, and Udemy Business. We also premiere videos every Wednesday and Friday at 1 o'clock. If you miss a video premiere, you'll still be able to find it later when it's convenient for you. You can find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, and you can find us on YouTube by going to our MCPL MO channel.